Free iZone. She's a creative producer at Onjul Arts Production. She's also produced a Marathi feature film, Narayan, and received great accolades all across Maharashtra. She has executed various market research projects for various corporates and social research for NGOs. She has presented and published various research papers on national and international forum. And we are very honored to have Ms. Devata Patil for this session. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you.
I hope my voice is audible to you.
Yes, yes. Voice is
Okay.
audible.
Okay. And the second speaker that we have for today is Miss Sthiti Pradnya Das. She too wear many hats as Miss Patil. She's currently working as a news curator for Scroll Media. She's a visiting faculty at KPB Hinduja College, teaching subjects like public relation, media research, new media to postgraduate students. She's also a sub-editor, writer for the magazine, The Leadership Review. She's an international speaker as well. She's presented various papers on different topics, ranging from geopolitics to foreign policy to semantics at various world conferences as well as across India. And she's quite active as far as sports is concerned. Now, we welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone.
Yeah. So now we look forward to you all giving us an insight into the topic. So without much ado, I request Ms. Patil to initiate the session, which will be then followed by Ms. Das. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Sadhika ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you, Saira madam and Dr. Paul for inviting me for this webinar. I would like to thank Rizvi College also for organizing this wonderful webinar, because a lot of research webinars happen, but they are from the academic point of view. And this one is different because it is going to cover the industry need for research. So I must congratulate the organizing team for having this webinar. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So I am told that I have 15 to 20 minutes. I will like to cover all these points in this time, and if some pointers are left, then maybe we can come back to it after the end or towards the end of the webinar. And we can have Q&A towards the end. So yeah, I mean, we are all getting used to this new normal, where we are conducting webinars and seminars online, and we are conducting lectures. So I would like to thank all the wonderful participants who've, in spite of these difficult times, have managed to come here on this webinar and are motivated to listen to the speakers. Yeah, so the topic is why research is needed by news media. So maybe my talk will complement what Sthiti would be covering. But before I move on to why research is needed, I would like to ask you that does news build trust? Yes, it does. Is the job of news to build trust? Now, these are two contradictory statements, because when we talk about news audiences, they constantly crib about that news should be credible, news should be balanced, news should be trustworthy. And on the contrary, when the news starts to build trust, it is also talking about building relationships. It is also talking about being emotional. And when that happens, the audiences will get emotionally connected to the news giving organization, and then probably, not necessarily, it may end up in audiences audiences being taken for granted. Now, there are a lot of layers to it. Of course, we're not getting into it, but if news builds trust, then if the job of the news is to build trust, the trust comes with credibility. And for any credibility to come in news organization, research is important, because without ground research, without proper research, credibility will not be built in news. And obviously, when if credibility is not built, trust will not be built. So therefore, news media must focus on research. Now, when I talk about research, generally the notion is academic research, getting published, following systematic procedures and all that. Of course, following systematic procedure is part of and parcel of the research. You can't skip that. There has to be a system to the research, otherwise the research falls flat and it is not credible. So the news media must get into research. Unfortunately, most of the news organizations don't have a research wing. I mean, they do have a couple of people working on research or individual journalists who are doing research at their own end. But a proper research body or research department is missing. They do have libraries and archives where journalists go and access to this information. But I would not say that it is foolproof research. Each journalist is trying to cover up, scrap the information, scrap the data at their end, and to build their own stories. But now that is where the danger lies, because each journalist is creating and coming up with their own ideas of doing research, their own methods of scrapping data and coming up with a story. And this is where the system lacks. So when I said that research is a systematic process, it means that research is a systematic process and it has to follow a system, something which is lacking, and the standardization of doing research is lacking in news media. So does that mean that journalists are not interested in doing research? I will not say that. There are a lot of challenges of doing research on field. First and foremost, journalists may not be well trained to do a systematic research. They may not essentially come from a proper formal education of media. Now this new wave of journalists, the new younger generation, is they are essentially coming out doing masters in media and all that. But if you talk about the previous journalists, who was good with English or Hindi or whichever language journalism was, and who had some knack of presenting data, they got into journalism and they were there out of interest. So that generation, which joined journalism out of interest, is now slowly getting down, and the younger generation is essentially coming out of the school of mass media. So which is comparatively a good situation to be in, because this generation is informed. At least they have learned research in their college. So they may not use all the methods and methodologies, but they have some orientation of doing research. Some they have the importance of they know the importance of doing research. So I would say that it is a good sign. But on the contrary, this journalist is also pressured with a lot of competition. There are so many news channels, so many print media, digital media is also coming up. So there is a huge competition, and at a time they are not only competing with vertical competition, but they are also competing with horizontal competition. Now what I mean by vertical and horizontal is print journalist is getting competition from fellow print journalists, and also from electronic media, that is television or digital media. So at any given point of time, the news is consumed by various audiences, and I have to break the news. I have to be the first one to break that news. So the breaking news phenomena, which is given to us by 24/7 news channel, we'll come to that also. So when I have to break the news, then I have the urgency to break it. I have a deadline to break it. I have to finish, I have to be the first to talk about it, because otherwise my competition will take over. And if the competition takes over, then the advertisers will go there, because whoever breaks the news first is the fastest, सबसे तेज, and all that. So there's a lot of factors that affect it. We'll talk about each one by one. So when there's an urgency to break the news, there's a deadline pressure, and there's a lot of competition, journalists tend to overlook research aspect. It's not that they don't understand the importance of research, but sometimes it is practically not possible to cover all the facets of a particular news and present the story. So what they do is there's episodic presentation and then there is thematic presentation. So what I do is I'll break the news first, and then maybe in the later segments I may get a detailed version of that news. So you'll still see that many of the hardcore news readers prefer print for a thematic news presentation. They will not, they will, and audiences are, intelligent. We can't say that our audiences are homogeneous and they are passive. They are active and they are heterogeneous, and they understand why and how they are consuming news. So the uses and gratification theory is very much applicable. So when audiences watch news, when they watch electronic news, they know that they are watching electronic news for the update, for the amount of 10 minutes 100 news items. For those kind of news consumption, they go for electronic media, specifically television media. And when it comes to thematic, they'll go for print. Now print, you'll always say, oh, print covers news very systematic manner, print is beautiful. Why? Because print has 24 hours. So when print has 24 hours, it will take some time and research upon it and then present the data. So it's not that print journalists are more intelligent than electronic media journalists, and therefore print is more reliable and more credible than television. So I would not agree to that. It's just the deadline pressures and the dynamics of work pressure vary from organization to organization. Now after that, digital media, it is even more sabse tez, because all of us have access to digital media in our personal devices, and the access to news, the comfort, the news has come in our comfort zones, something which is very natural to us through our mobile devices. So news media needs to do research. There are different dynamics of doing research for different organizations. So why news media should do research? Now news media needs to do research because of course, news coverage and all that, balanced story and credibility of the story, all those factors are important. But apart from that also, news organizations should do research because they need to understand the dynamics of the platform they are using, whichever various technological platform they are using, the way they are delivering the news, the way audiences are consuming the news, consumer behavior. Yes, I say consumer. Audiences, news audiences are consumers. It is a business. We'll talk about it. So they need to understand the consumer behavior. They need to understand the human-machine interaction, because your audiences are constantly interacting with machine, with digital, with electronic, with or the print media. So when all these dynamics are understood, the news media will be in a better position to disseminate news, to understand audiences, and to understand if I know my audience understanding, I will be in a better position to present my news, to simplify my news. So therefore, you'll see each news media has different set of audiences depending on how I interact with the news media. So you will see many of the news readers, print readers, script that Times has a very difficult language, and as compared to the Hindu or the HT. So and Express comparatively is again very simple, uses very simple language, shorter sentences, not so, you don't have to refer to dictionary all the time. Now this kind of understanding will news media will get if they are doing research. They are constantly interacting with their consumers. So therefore news media must do research. And like I said, there is a need for a systematic research department by all news media organizations. So I was talking about 24/7 news channels. My question is, are we prepared for 24/7 news channels? Is Indian audiences prepared for it? Now, when I say 24/7 news channels, so what happens is I have to, constantly present news to my audiences, because I have a 24/7, 24 hours into 7. So I have to them constantly. And therefore, there is a lot of demand for the raw material. When I say raw material, I mean news for the news organizations. So the raw material supply has to be constant. Now, when this raw material supply is constant, I have to have so many resources. The number of resources has to be increased by those numbers so that the raw material supply is constant, which also means that I have to invest a lot in those resources. It can be human resources, it can be transportation, or it can be cameras, anything that needs to be invested in to collect news. So when raw material is needed more, resources are needed more, which means it needs heavy investment. Where it needs heavy investment, of course, there has to be return on investment. So when I'm looking at return on investment, news is a business and I need to earn profit. So what happens is, then I'm trying to optimally utilize my resources, and all those economic principles apply. I'm not getting into the details of it, but the bottom line is that I have to earn profit out of this business. Otherwise, my news media, my business will not run. I will not be able to sustain. If I don't earn profit through advertisement, then then our audiences have to pay for that news. So that's a different debate topic altogether, whether our audiences are prepared to pay for news, or whether they are okay with advertisement disturbance in news. So the different audiences, I mean, our audiences cannot be compared with American audiences, where they pay for news. There are free ad-free news media. So if you take simple example of Wikipedia also, there is a donation page on Wikipedia where they say that donate to Wikipedia so that we can update you with latest information. How many of us have actually donated to Wikipedia? Um, I don't think so anybody has. So which means we are not ready to pay for news. In such a situation, we are dependent on advertisements. News channels are dependent on advertisements for the business to win. Why I'm trying to highlight on this aspect is that because I not rest more on resources, I am dependent on secondary data for collecting or for dissemination of information. So there's a lot of dependency on secondary data. When I say secondary data, I mean internet sources, or I mean citizen journalism. So when internet is used as a primary source, there have been times when whenever I think the first thing a journalist do is go on internet and search about it. So that is the level of secondary data dependency. And then what kind of websites we refer to, what is the credibility of those websites? Many a times Wikipedia is referred to as one of the primary source of information because Wikipedia is easily available, and that's the first thing probably Google gives you. So the first search page that you land up with, that is majorly your source of information. The journalist will not even go to page number 4 or 5 to search for information. Maximum you end up reaching to 2 or maybe third page, and then that's where your research ends. How many times we are, of course, taking quotes and bites from people is also. Saira ma'am, please let me know when my time is up. Maybe we can cover it later. I don't want to extend the webinar.
Sure.
Yeah. So when we talk about journalistic research, we are with more and more dependent on secondary information, and we are dependent on citizen journalism. What citizen journalism? Our citizens, provide news to news channels or to print media. So there are tips, and I'm not saying this is a new phenomenon. Earlier also citizens used to be a source of information, but with advancement in technology and increased communication channels, citizens are able to present their news to other citizens. So it is not only the news media which is presenting the news, it is citizens also, for the citizen, by the citizen, and all that. And citizens are also, giving information to the news channels for, so you'll see that a lot of time, camera recordings are given to news channels, and then they broadcast those camera recordings. So sting operations and all those, and the citizens generally, shoot a couple of minutes, and then they give it to electronic news media. So citizen journalism dependency is also there, and therefore, you know, we are as a news media, we are skeptical about the way news is delivered, the way news is covered. And it is practically impossible that the citizens are aware of systematic news gathering process, and being balanced and being credible and referring to correct sources. All that is practically not possible, especially when we are 135 crores. So there are challenges which news media needs to address too. So when we are, no, I'm talking about too many layers here, which, it's not only about research. So why research is needed? Yes, research is needed, but why research is not possible? So probably there are a lot of reasons why research is not possible. So general people, when we ask them, they will generally say that news has to be fair, balanced, accurate, complete. When we ask them, what do you mean by these terms? What do you mean by fairness of news, balanced news, news accuracy? Probably they will not be able to answer to these questions. So they don't know what it actually means. And what these broad concepts, how news organizations will achieve them. So there is a lack of clarity both at the audience level and at the organization level when we talk about fair, balance, accuracy, and completeness of the news. So when audiences don't know what it is, the news organizations don't know how to deliver it. So that's that's a situation paradoxical situation where we are currently in. So even more challenging in today's time specifically is when we talk about these traditional concepts of trustworthy and accuracy and all that. They were formulated much before the internet. So specifically when the print was introduced, at that time these concepts of fairness and balanced and all these were introduced. Now, with internet and digital media, the dynamics of news presentation and consumption has changed a lot. So does that mean that the dynamics of understanding these concepts also change? Probably we need to think about it. So do audiences, I come back to that same question, do audiences trust news? Probably a large number of audiences do. Even if it is half-baked information, even if it is not so properly done, systematic done research. Why audiences believe news? Why audiences trust news? You see a lot of misinformation and disinformation around us over our WhatsApp. There's every day, you open and at least 10 fake news will be there in your handset, and you still tend to believe it, and you still tend to forward it. I'm not saying illiterate audiences do it. Even literate audiences do it. I have seen university professors doing it, and on our university group, and many a times I have to say that this is a fake news and this is a misinformation. Yesterday there was a news item saying that Bill Gates is arrested by conspiracy. So such fake news is very common in digital media, and audiences believe this. Why? Because probably our audiences are not mature enough to understand the sources, and probably they were never told what the sources are. So even when we talk about print media school, it was always our the news media rarely discuss these sources. So our audiences never got into the mindset of digging at the source or looking at the source of the news. So that mindset was never developed, and therefore when it comes to digital media also, sutro ke anusar is tend to be believed because we never challenge the sutra. So with this I would like to conclude, because I think I'm getting into what Sthiti is planning to cover, misinformation and disinformation, and we'll continue with Q&A session. Yeah, over to you, Saira ma'am.
Thank you, Devita ma'am. We can proceed with our second speaker, Sthiti ma'am. It's all yours now. It's your forum.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. I'm good to go. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, yes.
I am. All right. So a very good afternoon to all the teachers and principals and to everyone who's attending and participating in today's session. I'm truly grateful to be here because in the time of crisis where we're actually in the midst of redefining how the news world is going to proceed, how the information world is going to proceed in the era of infodemia. I'm very grateful to Sarah ma'am and Sadhika ma'am and also Paul sir for and Risby College for inviting me. It's truly an honor, and I'd like to first start off my little talk with saying that I'm so happy and I'm very proud to actually be a part of a session where I have my own teacher who's actually been my teacher, Devita ma'am, who's been my teacher during my masters, and she's actually been my godmother for media research all through. And in the span of 5 to 6 years of my career, where I started off with print, with electronic media, and then transgressed into digital media, and then worked my way around as an independent researcher. There are certain alignments that I feel have emerged as a journalist and into the journalistic fraternity. You know, are the very understanding, like, you know, when Devita ma'am truly, you know, she highlighted some of the most vocal and some of the most stunning points of the kind of interface that we face and the kind of dichotomy that we face when we're out there on the job. Now, our job as journalists is no longer the traditional form where, you know, we have to go out in the, we have to necessarily go out onto the ground zero reporting, which of course is a wonderful feeling, but due to a lot of other constraints and the layers of, you know, who does it, there are restrictions now. So with the advent of new media technology, especially digital media, it has completely transformed the way we tell our stories to viewers like you, to consumers, to everyone who is an audience for our news and for our reports. I'd also like to quickly mention that if, this is going to be extremely interactive, and I'm really looking forward to the questions and to all the queries or questions or suggestions that each one of you all have, and you could put that on the chat box, and we'll definitely have time for it towards the end of once I complete in the next 15 minutes. So as a journalist, you know, our biggest challenge, I mean, on the personal front over the years has been that what sort of a journalist are you? Are you there to present news copies, where I give you reportage of the event of what has happened, where it has happened, how it has happened, who are the stakeholders involved, what is my character in the news that I'm trying to give you? Or is my responsibility a little bit more feature-ish, where I'm going to get into the second layer of the story, where what has been the historical significance? Is this right? I get into the idea of having themes and characters, where I analyze a particular piece and give it out to you. Now, that is not where I'm giving you news. That is where I'm giving you a particular piece that has layers of what I believe in, what I have researched. Now, today's topic about the significance of media research is extremely vital, because I realized the element of why, you know, research is so important and so imperative for journalists like us right from day one. You know, our job about sharing news out from news wires. So, you know, because we don't go out to ground zero very often, or we have different sources from where we acquire information to, you know, to disseminate it out on the website. We have wires. So wires would be anything like Reuters, it would be AFP, the Associated Press. In India, it'll be ANI. It'll also be the Press Trust. And then, of course, all of this is set up in the CMS setup, which is our internal documentation at the backdrop of the news media, where we collate the information and then we pick and choose about what exactly goes out. So I'm a news curator. So what my job has been is to basically be on the editorial side of news, where I have to, accumulate the top stories, the top headlines, and about the news pieces in 5 verticals, which is news, business, sports, technology, and celeb. So in the span of my shift, I have to handle the prime time for the UK news and the US news. That is what I've been doing in the past 4 years at my news desk. Now, as a journalist, as to what we face when we are primarily researching for what needs to go out after the breaking story, as ma'am rightfully pointed out, that when you're on digital media, when you have your scroll app, or when you have your first post app, or when you have I'm sure a lot of you all will have maybe a BBC News app or any of your primary news apps. They are a digital extension of, say, electronic media, or maybe even print media of late have started begun to have their digital apps to have a fastidious amount of information out. Now, when you're responsible for an entity which is so quick, which is so swift in disseminating the information out, in disseminating the news out, our prime responsibility is to give out the first breaking but the correct piece of news. It cannot be maligned with the factors of self-referential behavior. Now, by self-referential behavior, what I mean is that a lot of us in the journalist fraternity, big, small, middle, in the editorial, in the reporting domain, we have a tendency to constantly be very, have that cognitive response to the information of the external world according to what we believe in. And this has become a nature which is a cyclical process. And this is where research comes in, because that's exactly where you need to break the barrier of self-referential. For example, when the Brexit happened in the United Kingdom back in 2016, and then finally the exit of Britain until this year in Feb, we were asked very cogently and very specifically to ensure that the headline, the first line of the news report, and the element of live story is entirely objective. Now, how were we told to do that? Is that we were asked to rely on resources that have been objective with just giving the news and then the news report. So what we were asked to do is that you need to stick to just news reports, which are just giving the news. Now, news report is very different from a piece of news that comes immediately. So, we had sources like Guardian, we had sources like Telegraph, we had sources like the Chicago Tribunal, the CNN, or the Independent, Evening Standard. These are all primary sources of UK news, like, the main dailies of the UK. And in that, we also had to be extremely careful about not getting into any sort of tabloid that goes into the top news, or any sort of an opinion that goes out, because opinion, sadly, which is across the websites now, opinions which are across features now, opinions which are across all sorts of reports that I'm talking about, is not really news. And which is why, as ma'am also mentioned, that, we have sources like, say, Wikipedia, we have sources like, raw news. For example, as a journalist, I myself get baffled about a piece of information that I'm getting, especially when we are reporting in the COVID era, where health, a huge stakeholdership, responsibility of medical information, and responsibility of what we are projecting out, it becomes extremely crucial for us to go for primary sources. Now, I have experienced that with my teammates, where while we are researching for the news, it becomes a huge mismatch, because the techniques of research, even in the era of Googleization, let's be very honest. I mean, the infallibility of the old journalist who could go to ground zero and who could get the primary sources of information out sounded very heroic. It definitely gave you the true picture, probably. But now, in the layers of how news media has transformed, it becomes very crucial for us to rely on the very first layer of internet. And it probably sometimes is a bane, but sometimes it is a boon, because when you know that what you are passing through is being read by, say, 50 million readers across countries, across, say, 150 countries, in that split of second, while what you're curating goes out immediately from your sources, you need to be extremely responsible. And the idea of responsibility creates the entire idea of why research has become important. So if I have to send out a particular report, say on, recently I think on news, the idea of the COVID app. So every country is coming up with a new form of Corona app to sort of track the disease and to understand, what are the geographical implications of how many patients are there around, and to keep a track of your health. We had to significantly go through multiple research articles from Harvard's HBR website. We had to have access to the JS store, which is very academic. A lot of students, when I teach them, they also do not understand. They ask me that, ma'am, why do we need to study research methodology? We're going to go out in the field and just hunt for information, and that's what we're going to do. But the very hunting for information that we do has the stresses of what we have done even in our academic curriculum. I think Devita ma'am will be very happy when she hears this, because she was also my guide back in college. So during the COVID, when we had to report on that particular report, we had to fundamentally get into the research papers, the research briefings of health scientists, of primary sources of gazetted information from the Ministry of Health Affairs, or of the NHS, the National Health Scheme of England, to understand what they were doing, because we were not happy with what Reuters was giving us and what was AP giving us. So in order to verify as to what AP and Reuters is pledging is correct, we had to personally go and check on these websites. And it's a long reading, because as a journalist, it becomes you have to be a jack of all trades and a master of none. The niche to develop a particular trait, to understand the reporting that you're doing, has to be very accurate and very fundamental to giving your audience an idea of what is happening. Not an idea, but a clear picture of what is happening. You have to be accountable to what you're sending out. So when we did the research, and these are domains, especially in 2019-20, the legitimacy of fundamental research, even at the behind desk level. For example, I'm a news curator who sits behind the desk. We have multitudes of reporters who are doing out research across in the world through Reuters and AP, and multitudes of around 300 and 400 sources. Al Jazeera, you have the Indian Express, you have a lot of these sources who are probably there and are getting out, extrapolating information. But now comes a bigger challenge. When you know that you have to give out a news story. A news story is supposed to be a news story based on facts, figures, ideas of what has happened, and the very documentation of what has happened. It cannot be on a potential polarization of the story. So, for example, when I had to, when we had to cover the Brexit news, we were on the prime time news, which means there it was prime time, and for us it was later in the evening. We had to take cognizance of a sense of skepticism about what each European newspaper was reporting, because you understand that, British UK stand was UK stand, and it was being forged by a couple of US newspapers, US electronic media, US digital media, like basically US media, and the other part, the Asian bits or the major European bits, were completely bifurcated from the idea. So they had a layer of bias that, this is a very selfish move, the opinion. So they would give the news story out, and then they would say the heirs of Brexit has finally ringed. And since it has finally ringed, it's called the heirs of, there is a layer of what should not be told. And on the editorial side, we were strictly told, and that is our protocol, that you cannot have headlines, you cannot have reports that go out that have a layer of bias. and that have a layer of pro-government or an anti-government. And this is where our biggest challenge lies, because we need to take everything with a healthy dose of skepticism, by not forwarding the message out, by not sending in the information out that might provoke a sense of fear, that might provoke a sense of intolerance. And that's where our credibility stands. For us, what has been extremely important and difficult to combat has been bias, being free of bias, having reports which are purely information based. Second is transparency. Now, on a personal front, we take everything with a healthy dose of skepticism. Like we all know about WhatsApp and how the chatbots have been now strengthened in order to not send the radical information out or misinformation out. In fact, I think just last week, or probably the early version of this week, we had the My Corona government app to really combat the sense of infodemia. Now, in the era of pandemic, where our core responsibility is not just of a journalist, our core responsibility is actually to ensure the stakeholdership, a responsible stakeholdership, that if you're reporting on corona, which is a pandemic which is affecting lives, it has completely aired the cloud of fears in the era of globalization. My responsibility is beyond being a journalist. My responsibility is about giving the right kind of do's and don'ts as well. Now, do's and don'ts mean medical do's and don'ts, which I understand by entirely reading through the government documentation, the medical documentation. And what we've also noticed is that a lot of journalists don't do that, because it's fast, it's supposed to be fast. But in order to be fast and to be factual and to be responsible, our responsibility is to be extremely aligned with the idea of research. And we are in this era of Googleization. This was a term that actually it was initiated in 2011 and 12, but the ramification of this term, like jo essence hai Googleization, all of us, everybody who is attending today, everyone who's an audience to any sort of media has become a creator of information, has become a consumator of the information as well. So why do I say creator is because the moment we type that so and so has reported so and so, but this is what the information is from this particular source, and when you send that on your friends group on WhatsApp, or when you post that even as a Facebook status, that in itself becomes not a source. Probably it may not be a source of information, but that in itself becomes information. And that takes me to the point where there's a very famous saying that where there is information, ignorance is a bliss. What happens is that for us, we've been battling with this idea of how do we get the transparency out. So in order to give out the information to the audience without the act of omission, what do we incorporate? What do we not incorporate? What do we omit? What do we imbibe? And telling the audience about what we know is there with all the media houses. All of us do it. What we know. This is hamare paas pehla news hai. We've done the first story. But what we don't know is also something that needs to be put out. So for example, if there's a breaking story and we don't have much report on that, we would put the headline out, and then we would have then we would write that more information is to be followed. And when that more information is to be followed, we are gathering information from the secondary data, and we're also gathering our own educative information from the right kind of search engine optimization that we do. And that becomes a very imperative standpoint, and which is why we firmly believe that in fact in the years to come, looking at how news media organizations have been working, whether it's digital, electronic, or even print, the amount of cognitive responsibility given to research. And now this research needs to not be on what you want to layer to the people. It should be on the idea of information that is fact, and it is not inadvertently sent out to influence the public opinion. a lot of the times, even the idea of research, the notion of why we are researching, for example, on a very personal front, our preferences could be, pro-government, it could be anti-government, it could be neo-government, whatever our irrespective political beliefs are. I always, feel a great deal of responsibility, because ideologies are a beautiful thing, but ideologies are supposed to be completely detached when you are on the ground, when you're on the desk, when you're on the ground speaking to your audience, or typing to your audience, or textually sending, verbally sending out any sort of information. Because what happens is, there is a central character, and this central character is about, say, the faces, the people that are involved in what we are reporting about. And that character, that central character, has a sense of internal tension, and that internal tension is also faced at behind the desk. What does your media website stand for? Is what has been the ideology? Is it leftist? Is it rightist? Is it centrist? Luckily, at our job, we've been able to keep that at bay, because what we directly do is sending out manually editorially created information out to the public, let them read it, and let them make the decision on what they want to believe. So the idea of why journalistic research on the field is important is because you can talk objectively. Everything is not about proving a point. It is not about saying that this much has been done, this much has not been done, why it hasn't been done. Of course, these are pertinent questions, but in the transgressing of this kind of information, the very content of what we want to tell the audience about our sources, about the positioning of what we know, freed from biases, is a potential challenge that we as journalists face, especially when you're a part of an organization. But if your research skills are fundamentally strong, you can, you are capable to do that 85% of perfection job. And our challenges have been entirely Google. It's been, JS stores. It's been HBR. I mean, I have, I felt the need to have personal subscription to, research websites, every day, probably even to like edit out a 400-piece article. I might have to sometimes read around 1,500 words. And this is a challenge when I have to be on my toes immediately. But research is a skill, and I feel it's supposed to be instilled, because the perils of public opinion, the perils of misinformation goes out at a very, very rampant speed, and this does tend to have a very harmful impact in in how we perceive journalists, in how we perceive media, and which is why the whole idea, credibility of media kahan pe hai. I think that is because students who are studying to become journalists, students who want to be out in the media domain, it is so important that they are taught about research, they are taught about theories, because what they are taught there is very clandestinely useful, very secretively useful for them at an individual level when they're a part of a media. And more generally, technology has improved the very process of how we identify stories, what are newsworthy, because immediately the idea of, and when I say newsworthiness of what I pick is not about what makes it sensational. Sensationalism is not always supposed to be the backdrop. What we actually pick is what is the biggest news of the hour, depending on the home pages of what is happening. And that sometimes might be sensational, that sometimes might just purely be situation specific, that there has been an event and that is of global prominence, and that is why it's going out in the, into the website in the top news at this point of time. Now, what the second challenge, what we also face, is the bifurcation of the new media sources of information in the area of global Googleization that we face, is that feeds from social networking sites and services. For example, Facebook and Twitter, especially Twitter, provides a snapshot of events that is happening around. There's a very there's a brief example that I could probably share. When the World Economic Forum happened, what what were the countries wanting to say was not there, or the synopsis of the forum was not there at any website that we could get. We were able to procure that from the Twitter handles of the top 10 economists about what the genesis was. So in order to create a report, we had to curate the genesis of what has happened, and then once the wire was out, we had to tally that, is this, is this the information, and is that, and then collate it and then send it out. So increasingly, responsible journalism is also existing, but it gets mired with what your organization wants you to do, and that is sad. It's as ma'am said, the survivability of corporatization of media, whether we can actually survive. Everything comes down to the trade and commerce of the business of news. But I feel that if there is this idea of being responsible while you are researching, because the essence of telling out a story is very important, and choosing that appropriate theme and that appropriate juncture is extremely important, because what you send out is completely going out to say 9 million readers across, and it might have 9 million ramifications through constant sharing of apps and technology. Now, the other, the last point I'd like to also touch is that, there is always this challenge of narrative interplay. For example, there is always this tension between journalists with their own selves, that whether, if there is an event, then what was right, what was wrong in the conflict, what was the score keeping about money, what was the power of politics, because these are big words, and these big words do have a lot of cognitive and emotional influence on what you believe in. But you need to remember that when you are in the role of an editor or a journalist in the domain, you cannot be an audience of you cannot play the role of an audience. It is their role to decide on what the emotions and the narrative should be. And that's exactly where you need to do a personal, you need to be very, very careful and objective about the hypothesis of the very event that is happening. Sometimes the hypothesis is probably not even needed. What you would probably need is just the abstract of the report of what has happened. But many stories lack, in most public issues, in the tensions of trying to get out the excellence and the opportunity. There is also a tension between the community on the growth to increase their reader base, like I said, the commerce of money making, and they somehow become mutually exclusive. And sometimes you have to fall a victim to your editorial bias. But if your research is strong, there is definitely a great level of ambivalence of news that is, and redundancy that is rejected. And that rejection is extremely crucial in the era of how we report, especially in today's world. So I think I would rest it here, because a lot of points have been touched, even by Devita ma'am, and we'd like to maybe keep the session more open, because I see a lot of questions also being asked. And I think we could take it ahead from there. Sarah ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I would request all participants to post their questions in the chat box, and both our speakers will take it up. Before we start addressing your questions, it's a humble request for all participants to write their names. We are seeing a lot of phone model numbers and a few alphanumeric names. It'll help us take the attendance more smoothly. Requesting all participants to change their profile name to their name as per the registration form. Please, if you all could do it, it would be a great help as we are taking attendance. Okay, we're now open for questions. We have about 20 minutes, 25 minutes for questions. I believe our questions have already started coming in, and it's a humble request to participants to keep the questions to the topic and not away from the topic. Thank you.
Okay. While Stithi was talking, I was seeing a lot of questions were popping up. Before I proceed, I would like to, give explanation of 3-4 concepts which we've been using. Am I audible?
Yeah, ma'am, you are.
Yeah. So
Yes, ma'am.
we've been using these concepts, and I saw that some of the participants are not from media background. So I would, give explanation of these concepts in one line. So we are talking about misinformation and disinformation. There is a difference between two. Misinformation is something which is intentionally, the user of this information is intentionally passing on wrong information. So जानबूझ के आप गलत information जब लोगों तक पहुंचाते हो, when the intentions could be, not so good, or you want to pass on wrong information, that is called misinformation. और जब आप गलती से गलत इन्फॉर्मेशन लोगों तक पहुंचाते हो तो उसे डिसइंफॉर्मेशन कहते हैं. दोनों ही टर्म्स का यूसेज जो है वो अलग अलग है. Don't use the term fake news anymore because it doesn't give the right feeling to that concept. So misinformation and disinformation are the more appropriate terms which news media uses. And there was a term sensationalism. Sensationalism also comes trivialization. So sensationalism is something when you are, exaggerating a particular news item beyond the normal, it's called sensationalism. And trivialization is when you are, hiding the information, when you're not presenting the fact completely, you're trivializing the news, it's called trivialization. And Googleization is a very common term. Everybody will understand it. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. I think that was actually needed. I'm glad you could do that. But ma'am, Devata ma'am, I actually noticed that that's completely your domain, because I do see a couple of questions on, on how does this entire business, like the idea of ads, I think, how do we sustain, and then the follow up. If you could just highlight on that, and then I could take the questions on how we follow up at the ground.
Yes, there's very important aspect which we need to address to and understand as an audience is that खाली पेट जो है वो पूजा नहीं होती है. तो आपको अगर पूजा करनी है तो पहले पेट भर लो और फिर पूजा के लिए बैठोगे तो पूजा में ध्यान लगा रहेगा. कहावत है पुरानी. तो जब आप न्यूज बिजनेस की बात करते हो तो you need to understand that news runs on money. There has to be liquidity in any business, and if the business is not happening, the business will not survive. So our news market, or any media market for that matter, runs on two principles. It is either audience driven or it is advertisement driven, unlike other businesses. So either the money comes from audiences or it comes from advertisers. So when I say audiences, you can take cinema as an example, where box office collection is the primary source of business. So the money is coming from audiences. And then it comes from advertisers, which is an example of news media business. Magazine, to certain extent, relies on both, where the money comes from both advertisements also and from advertisers also. So when it is advertisement driven, then obviously the money, the audiences are not paying the money, the entire business is dependent on advertisers. And when it is dependent on advertisers agenda, which we call corporate agenda, plays a very important role. So whenever we talk about news business, we are talking about agenda setting. It's a concept in media where who sets the agenda, how news should be presented. So there are a lot of factors that are, to be more specific, there are 4 factors that affect the agenda of the news. A is the corporate agenda, which is the advertiser's agenda. Then there is policy agenda. Somebody did mention about government policies in the chat box, I could see. So who defines news? So either it could be the policymakers, the government, which is called policy agenda, the advertisers, because ultimately it is, I'm putting in the money, so I want to reach to my audiences, my target audience. So corporate agenda. Then there is audience agenda, as in which news is popular. Accordingly, news media would be interested in showing that news. So if you are more interested in shitty news, news media will give you shitty news. If you are more interested in serious news media will give you serious news. So it's more of a demand and supply thing. If you are hooked on to बिल्ली सीएम का कुत्ता बीमार है और बिल्ली ने चौथे माले से जंप मारी और वो बच गई, this kind of news, then obviously news media will give you, because that is where the hits lies. So you'll see even in digital media, a lot of sensationalism pictures are used, mostly sexual in nature, erotic in nature, and then you tend to click. It's a click business. So wherever you get click, people will give you those kind of news. So it's what you demand. So news is a reflection of your demand. Please understand this. So if you demand serious news, news business will deliver seriously. Ultimately, remote is in your hand. So whether you want to watch Discovery History or whether you want to watch Saas Bahu serials is your choice. So news agenda and audience agenda generally work in friction. Okay. So there were, yeah.
Yeah, ma'am, I think that was, I mean, you mentioned, I mean, that was completely your domain, and that's very beautifully said, because that's actually the tension that the editorial and the corporate part of the media house has, and then how we become victimized to it, because sometimes, like I said, we have to give in to the editorial bias. But also, ma'am, what I'm also seeing is a couple of questions from about I did see certain questions about follow-up of news, and because in the era of the idea of fake news, I think broadly on these themes, I'd just like to quickly add a small point that yes, I think Dr. Harmeet and Dr. Meenakshi have asked about the safety measures of protecting reporters or editors from assault. I think that is one aspect that we could both highlight on, because protection of reporters and assaults from assaults have been on an increase in terms of the phenomenon and details, and it definitely will require a different topic, because there have been measures that have to be taken at both that have been taken at international and the national levels, but again, it's become a lot more naked out there when you're reporting, because sometimes you are in the quest for truth, and that creates a tendency of you becoming vulnerable to a lot of forces that you may not like, so threat calls, etc. I may not be the right person to give you an entire detail on that, because that would require an entire session, but that's a very rightfully raised point where protection measures are very important, which is why the very idea of going out and hunting for information also becomes a little bit more challenging. The ideas about breaking news, the speed of breaking news, and why research is and how we could, create that match between information. There's a very small, there's a small anecdote that I'd like to share. When in the 2019 we saw a lot of examples, about some of the changes that were taking place. So. In India, we had the citizenship bill. I've not get into the ideas of what the bill was and the details, but I remember we were supposed to send out a report immediately after the verdict, which was at around 12:30 in the afternoon. It began by 11 o'clock in the morning. And it was so important for us to be on the number one of the SEO optimization. But it was so difficult to get any sort of information out. So, what we had to do, we had to actually legit go onto the Gazette website, read the documentation, and quote what the documentation was saying. So, the constitutional documentation, and that did take a good 45 minutes and a telephonic conversation with a lawyer, and then sending out that piece of 300-word news article. So if you might be on a 3 to 4 minutes or a 10 minutes, race lower as compared to any other media house, but more than fast, accountability of the fast information is what we've been focusing on, that, and that is what we've been trying to do. Second, if I'm sure if we're able to answer that, ma'am, I also see a question on, there's a question on younger generation is informed about the credibility of media, but the credibility of media is lost, which I've definitely highlighted on the idea of fake news and what and why, because of lack of research and what we actually send out. the credibility comes into question. But if you could also highlight on that, because I'm sure you'll have some really pertinent points to make on the credibility of media being lost.
Thank you, Siti.
Yeah, ma'am.
So before I move on to that part of the question, there was a question on whether assault on reporters and editors
Yeah.
needs to be protected. That's a very important point, because even doctors in the COVID period are attacked. So it's not only related to reporters and editors. It is you'll see that physical assault is happening in almost all sections. So it's not to do it's nothing to do with the news media. It is more of the social mindset. It is more of a the issue needs to be addressed at the family communication level, where in our families, venting out, when we are venting out, when the parents are venting out, physical assault is seeked, and that is the culture of our family. And when these children grow up, they also feel that when I have to vent out of frustration, any frustration, it could be news related or it could be COVID related, so physical assault is the solution. So it's not nothing to do with news media. It is more of a social mindset. Then somebody talked about credibility of youngsters are losing credibility. I would not say that. Even adults lose credibility. Credibility is it doesn't come with age. It's a wrong notion where we say, oh, mature audiences are more credible. They just look credible. They know how to cover up their fakeness as compared to youth. So every section is credible and is not credible. It depends on your orientation as an individual of seeking balanced information. So it is more individualistic in nature rather than social. So credibility is not related to youth only. It's overall. Then somebody talked about research is not possible in breaking news era. So in 24/7, I did cover this aspect that when news is delivered in 24/7 manner, doing holistic research is practically impossible. And my answer to that is we don't need 24/7 news channels. It is not the audience demand for 24/7 news channel. It is more of a corporate demand to have a 24/7 news channel. So we don't need 24/7 news channel. News can wait. I mean, no news is. There are breaking news which can come through digital media, but we don't need 24/7 news channels. And I think the majority of the damage that has happened to the credibility and journalistic principles and ethics is can be blamed to 24/7 news channels. Then somebody talked about why wrong news about government is disseminated to audiences. Then I would like to be a little academic over here in research or in news. When we teach news, we are talking about 4 schools of thought: Soviet Union, authoritarian state, libertarian state, and social responsibility. So news, every state has different permissions or sanctions granted to news organizations. Unlike China, we are more liberal, we are more socially responsible. Our news media has to be socially accountable. Yes, news is manipulated, but you should be lucky that we are comparatively in a better situation than America also. So it's not only that it is happening in India, where we say that the ruling government has taken over news item. It's a common phenomena which can be observed across all countries, across globe. So and I did talk about policy agenda there. So this has got to do more with the policy agenda, which is one of the friction aspects when it comes to news agenda setting. So in our kind of setup, why government intervention is there? So yes, there is. If I have to give you a ratio, I mean, maybe incorrect in giving that ratio, but it's 30-70, 70% socially responsible and 30% authoritarian state. which of course varies from news organization to news organization. So it could be opposite also. I don't want to name the news channels here and get into controversy, but there are some news channels which are 70% authoritarian and 30% socially responsible. So, but then that is there. So authoritarian state and social responsibility both go hand in hand in our kind of setup.
Ma'am, there's also what I've seen is that there are certain there's a very good question actually on is media research nowadays limited to follow up for feature stories, and I think there's also a follow up on that question where I think so basically the element of follow up stories, ma'am, as a journalist, it's actually become increasingly important for us to have the idea of robust follow-ups, and that's actually synonymous to the kind of research we do. It's also directly in there is a tendency for follow-up stories, but follow-up stories are always consequentially influenced to what are we covering. For example, if it's a report on say the monetary policy, the biennial monetary policy of India, what did the RBI do? Why did the cash reserve ratio come down to 3% at the lowest in the past 10 years? What is the implication of that on the MSMEs? Now we're in the COVID era. So right now, suddenly the medium and small enterprises have become very, very relevant because of the down crisis of the economy after the COVID-19 interface. So I will have to definitely go through the reports and follow up on what has happened thematically on that particular economic issue to write down reports currently. So in a way, it is very proportional to the kind of stories we're covering. So if it's something very incident specific, which is episodic, then it would just probably be the report and then maybe a follow-up report in the next day if required. But if it's on a scale of the idea of economics or ramification of international relations, or the idea of some constitutional amendment that is having an impact on say on some kind of a social aspect, then follow up as a mechanism becomes important. It is an indispensable tool, and it's also indispensable because that's where your maximum amount of research into themes and facts lie. So it's not a very permanent thing in the idea of it's not very permanent in the day-to-day basis, but it is very permanent in terms of the broader ideas of what sort of a report is important. So the nature of a global event and the synchronization of what has happened and what is the situation now. And mind you, this is not about what I believe the situation is going to be, but what has happened, what has been the genesis, what has been the concept, what has been the review of literature there. There is a sense of review of literature that comes in there. And then we conclude on where does the government or where does the authority or where does the situation stand now. So follow-ups are integral, and they are not just follow-ups right now, but it depends on the nature of what the global scenario or what the national scenario of news is in that particular month or time, and that's how we decide on what is to be driven throughout. Over to you, ma'am.
Yeah. Follow-up stories are needed. They are indeed needed, but it's practically not possible all the time to have a follow-up story. So if I have to, my own observation about our news media is that we present news in a very episodic manner. We rarely go in the news presentation. When I say episodic and thematic, what I mean is news to us comes in episodes. So just like Saas Bahu episodes. So the Saas Bahu daily soaps are more thematic in nature, where it's there are characters and they're engaging with each other, and there is a story and there is a central line and plot and all that. But comedy serials like Tarak Mehta Ka Ulta Chashma is more episodic in nature, where one episode has got nothing to do with the second episode, and still you can consume all the episodes, and it has reached 1,000+ episodes. So what I mean here is our news media is more episodic in nature rather than thematic. Why? Probably some journalists lack the maturity and sensibility to handle a story in a thematic manner, because when you are presenting a news in a thematic manner, it needs a lot of reading. So you will see that editorial pieces of print media are more thematic in nature, because of course they are editorial pieces and it comes from editors who understands the theme. Not everybody has that kind of understanding, which probably could be one of the reasons. Also, there are too many episodes happening around us. When we look at news items, there's something in something or the other happening in all the beats, be it science, weather, environment, politics. So we are, news media is constantly trying to deliver news, something of all, and still you will see, scientific field will complain that not enough science related stories are coming. Environment activists will complain that not enough environment related stories are coming. I would personally say development journalism is not covered. So very little space and too many beats to be covered. So it lacks the thematic presentation that we need as a news audience.
Ma'am, we'll take the last question, a lucky pick from the chat box as we are nearing our time. It's a request for participants. The feedback link will be posted in the chat box. It is not going to be posted in the WhatsApp group. Neither will it be mailed to anybody. Kindly wait back and fill the feedback form. Only then the certificate will be given. It will be posted shortly. We are aware you are anxiously waiting for it. It will be posted in the chat box only in some time. Ma'am, last question. You could take a lucky pick.
Yeah, I would like to answer one question which was posted earlier, which is important because somebody said media is misleading innocent people. And that was an interesting comment. People are not innocent. Our audiences are, like I mentioned earlier also, they are active, they are heterogeneous, and they understand. They know why they are consuming news. They know why a particular, I mean, even if the news is fake, they do understand. So you will see a lot of audiences will go for electronic news just for getting the updates, and then they go for print for thematic. And there are multiple sources of information. So there are two factors here which we need to look at. So audiences are not innocent, audiences are lazy. There's a lethargy in the audiences. There's something called accessibility bias, which means that audiences will access information which is easily available, which is for which they don't have to really take efforts. So if I enlist 10 items to you, one after the other, maybe 10 vegetable items, I say potato, tomato, and chili and all that, you'll pick chili because that was the most recent and easy to memorize. So that's accessibility bias, which is very much pertinent in audiences. And second reason for this is limited effects, where my understanding of news media is limited to my experiences. So I am not literate. So media literacy is one of the very important, and a completely new session can go on this media literacy in India. So as an Indian audiences, we lack media literacy. We are not aware. We lack visual literacy. We lack media literacy, and it is media's responsibility to make our audiences aware and independent of making decisions. But will media audiences, media organizations do that? That's a debatable question.
Yeah, Sarah ma'am, if time permits, a quick 1 minute, 30 seconds response I had in addition to what ma'am just highlighted.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. So there were a lot of questions also again about information explosion, and as ma'am rightfully said that currently, as I've also highlighted on points when I discussed about why it was important for us to be responsible as journalists, but audience today, be it a teenager boy, be it a 50-year-old, be it anybody across ages in India, particularly if I'm just going to talk about India right now because we've spoken on global ideas. The coherence of, there is definitely an information overblast. Like I said, where there's information, ignorance is a bliss is what is being told. But in the era of information, what is also very, very important and what we are lucky is that we also have access to a lot of web, and it is entirely the responsibility also of the audience, because today's news dissemination is not about me reading a teleprompter and you just, audience is just nodding to the information that's coming out. Y'all are also a very big part of the process of information, the osmosis, the sending out of information, accepting, and your feedback. It's a two-way and a very active process. So the idea of researching and verifying the data is also very responsible at the audience's stakeholdership. I think that is the very significance of why we are having this webinar. Because, for example, if there's a forward, like my, at my own place, it was very easy for my mom to share that out to everyone a couple of months ago. But then it became imperative for her to understand and verify that, nay, what is the source of this? Why is this happening? Then she would Google paste it. Then she would go into the 6th and the 7th layer of the PDF publication and understand, okay, is this really the right thing that's happening? Or is it fake news? So understanding the very source, and by default, rather than just copy pasting, the idea of source becomes understandable to all of us, because we're all by default on social media, into some extension of social media. So I think the information explosion is a responsibility of both what we are creating and of what you guys are perceiving. I think that becomes a very important role play here.
One last point in addition to what Sthiti said, because I saw this question. What happens to the illiterate audience who are majorly dependent on television channels, and do they do research, or are they cross-checking information? Let me just tell you that our illiterate audience is more mature, and I'm not saying just because I want to say it, I have experienced it, are more mature. If you take examples of our elections, our voters have not gone wrong in choosing. I don't want to get into the debate of who gets elected and all that, but if you look at the macro picture, I'm not talking about micro picture. If you look at the macro picture of elections and voting, our illiterate audiences, who comprise of maximum voters, have not gone wrong in the voting pattern. So if you take the recent example, there is a stable with majority government in center, and there are regional political parties which you see are getting elected in states, which is a perfect balance for the democracy. So don't underestimate television audience.
Okay, due to lack of time, we were supposed to finish by 1. We are spilling over by about 10-15 minutes. We will now propose the vote of thanks, and we will also post the feedback link. So you all can please fill the feedback, and once the vote of thanks is over, we can then say bye to each other. Okay, Sadhika ma'am would be proposing the vote of thanks. I think we've lost connection with her. Okay, just to take the session further. It has been a wonderful session, and I would like to thank our management for motivating us. Our president, sir, I would like to thank our director, ma'am, for constantly guiding and motivating us to reach out to the teaching fraternity as well as the students. I would also like to thank our principal, sir, for constantly guiding us and ensuring that the session runs smoothly from all aspects. I would like to thank both our speakers, Devita ma'am and Sthiti ma'am, to give us their precious time and to throw light on topics that are very, very relevant today and are the need of the hour, keeping in mind the situation that we are in. I would like to thank each one of you to be patient with us, to be calm with us, and to be a good participative audience. I would also apologize for those participants whose questions we have been unable to answer, but we will come up with other sessions in the future where these things could be addressed again, maybe at length and also maybe with another perspective. Ma'am has just posted the feedback link in the chat box. Kindly fill in the feedback form. It will not take more than a minute. Please fill in the feedback form and then we could continue with our day routine. It has been a wonderful audience. And if anybody else from the participants would like to express themselves or say something, probably we could unmute you and take any feedback or suggestions on record. You could just raise your hands, we'll unmute you and we can have just a few. We don't have time for many. In the meanwhile, we're requesting others to please fill in the feedback form. Okay, I guess all our participants are filling in the feedback form. We are seeing the registrations coming in. Sadhika ma'am, can you hear me? Yeah. Can you please take it ahead? Yes, yes.
Yeah, I posted the link, feedback form link. So kindly fill in the form and submit it. Okay, for this insightful session, I would like to thank everyone who has helped in putting the webinar together. The first and the foremost gratitude goes to our management, Dr. Akhtar Hassan Rizvi, the President of Rizvi Education Society, and Advocate Mrs. Rubina Akhtar Hassan Rizvi, the Director of Rizvi Education Society, for supporting us in conducting this session. I would like to extend my thanks to our principal, Mr. Paul Raj, for being so supportive throughout the entire session, from proofreading the content to be present here for the webinar. Thank you, sir. My heartfelt gratitude goes to our eminent speakers to give insight into the topic in depth, emphasizing on how one has to be an alert and responsible journalist as well as citizen when one consumes and disseminates news in the age of information overload. Thank you for your precious time and sharing your expertise, knowledge, and experience with us. I would also like to thank our BMM coordinator, Ms. Saira Tumbi, who since more than a month, metaphorically, has been on her toes to get things right. Thank you, ma'am. Last but not the least, I thank all the participants, principals, heads of different departments, teachers who have joined us from across Mumbai as well as India. Thank you for being so interactive and wonderful audience. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
We've posted the WhatsApp, the feedback link in the chat box. You can just click on it and it'll direct you to the form, or you could copy paste it in the browser. Kindly fill in the feedback form, as it will help us to organize sessions even in the future. We are seeing the responses coming in, but it's a little slow. We're requesting all participants to please fill in the feedback form. It's been posted. You could just click on it and you'll get directed to the form directly. In case it is not taking you, just copy paste it in your browser. It's a very simple procedure. I'm requesting each participant to please fill in the feedback form. It will be a great help for us in organizing sessions in the future, in terms of coverage topics, in terms of any technicalities. Also, after filling in the feedback form, in case some of you have not received the certificate, please contact us on our chat individually. We can look into your cases, though that problem is not expected to come up. Just in case, with respect to anybody, we're requesting all the participants to fill in the feedback form. Please, it will be a great help for us. And for those who have, we would not like to hold you on. It was a wonderful session. On that note, stay home, stay safe, stay protected.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think we're all going to head back. And thank you so much, Sarah ma'am. Thank you so much to everyone who's made this possible. I think by the looks of the questions and the responses, we are very happy. Both Devita ma'am and I are extremely happy that, there are people who are responding that even though they're not from the media domain, they've been able to understand what we were trying to say. And that has been the very focus of why this webinar was organized. I'm really looking forward to, to a lot more in the future. And thank you so much, ma'am, for having us. Thank you so much, Rizvi, for inviting us. It's been a very, it's been a very wonderful and it's been a great experience for us to be here today and interact.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Also, we are looking into the comments. Like I mentioned, if there is any problem in your certificate, please just WhatsApp either Sadhika ma'am or me with your name, your WhatsApp number, and we will look into it case-to-case basis. We are looking at a large number, so we could address it one-on-one. For the rest, I mean, we are also getting people who are saying they've received their certificates and everything is smooth. For those, your certificate may not come in your inbox. It may go to your spam, and maybe in your spam, it may show under promotions. So wait for some time, check. In another 10 minutes, if you don't get it, probably you could contact us. But give it some time, refresh your inbox, provided the inbox that the email ID that you mentioned in the feedback form, that is correct and valid. If you've made a mistake in that, you're not likely to get your certificate. In case there is a problem, kindly contact us. We look into it case to case. Also, if you haven't received it, please be patient. Look into your spam. Also, in your spam, look into the promotions mail. It tends to go and sit there at times. For the rest, I think we could end the meeting here. Our numbers have been shared. It has been a wonderful session, and we would hope to have other webinars with a similar audience, which is packed to full houses. It has been an encouraging session. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, speakers. Thank you, participants. And we would end it here and hope to see you all soon again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.